Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find latest album reviews. You can find our band interviews, and you can find live coverage of the concerts that we get. As you can tell by the title, the year is ending. I wanted to get this out before the year is over with and done with, and I just wanted to go through a good amount of my favorite records. This is by far the hardest year that I've had to cycle through bands and pick albums that I really enjoyed and really loved and grew over and just fell fondly for over this past year. There have been some really amazing releases, and I'm going to be splitting up between albums and EPs. I feel like some of the albums that I like became EP or were like EPs, or like kind of like in between, like albums and EP length in terms of that. So I am doing a totally separate video on that one, but this one is specifically for the albums that I have for this year. I have 25 albums that I think are really great, and I have 5 like kind of honorable mentions that I feel like were really good, just didn't make it into my top tier list. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit that thumbs up. I'm going to be doing a little bit more of these top sort of albums, EPs, tours, things of that nature before the year's out, and then I'm gonna go into some anticipated stuff like I did last year. So we're gonna get it off with the honorable mentions. The fifth one that I have for my honorable mentions is Hearts Like Lions, If I Never Speak Again. I've met these dudes twice. I met them initially. I think they were touring with the Ongoing Concept at the time. I thought they had a really unique sound and really interesting to me. I am a big fan of indie rock as well. I feel like they kind of have that sort of flavor to their music, and it's really really poppy, really catchy, really rhythmic, and it's really beautiful. I feel like this record is definitely very close to the albums of the year in that tier list, but just didn't quite make it just because this whole year has been stacked with really great records. So Hearts Like Lions, If I Never Speak Again, definitely go check that one out. So for number 4, what I have is A Lot Like Birds, Divisie, and I have been kind of an on again, off again fan about A Lot Like Birds. I feel like they're a really great band, and I felt like all of the sort of albums that they have done up to this point have been really good, but I felt like this one stood out to me a lot more because Corey and their bass player, I forget his name, but they both do vocals in this record, which I think is really cool and really kind of separates and diversifies their sound. They also toured with Hearts Like Lions, so that's another reason why I fell in love with this record too, just because I've been listening to that. And usually when I go to shows, I'm a big proponent on listening to especially the albums on that tour. If they have an album out or if they have something releasing in the future, I try to listen to the singles before I go to shows. So I was definitely jamming Divisie at that time, and it definitely is one of those albums that was really close to being an album of the year for me as well, but just was not on that list. So we're going to move into number 3 on my list of honorable mentions. It's going to be Civil Use Conversations. They are good buddies of mine. They are from the Philly area, and they're really great. I thought their debut kind of full-length record, Conversations, really killed it. They released a B-side song pretty recently as well, too, and that one's awesome as well. But again, this was very close to the albums of the year, probably more so than the other ones that I have picked on here, just because they have a unique sound. It's very it's very interesting, and if you haven't heard their newest record, Conversations, I'd really recommend going to do it. They have a track featuring Bradley Walden of Emerosa, so definitely go give that a listen. I think it's really great, and it's definitely amongst my records that I spin often, but again, it's not in that sort of top tier that I feel like a lot of the records that I have for top 25 have really encompassed for me. So we're going to move into number 2 on my honorable mentions, which is Ghost Iris Blind World. They are a band from, I believe, Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, and they put out a phenomenal record this year too. Again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I think they did an awesome job. It has really catchy stuff, mostly cleans, which is really cool. Kind of has that Tesseract sort of vibe to it, but a little bit heavier. It does have some screaming elements in it as well too, and I feel like they are definitely, I would hope that they get big in the US, because I'd love to see these guys tour. I think they put, again, another phenomenal record out in the same veins of a lot of albums that came out this year that have that sort of styling to them, but they just have this uniqueness that I really think that you guys should go check out. So probably the number one on the honorable mentions, that I feel like just missed the bar, was Northern Ghost, Happy, Sad, Depressed, Suicidal. I think they put out a phenomenal record. Definitely remind me of classic like 2000 screamo, post-hardcore, in the veins of like Under Oath, Silverstein, that sort of vibe to it, but just modernized. And I think they really did a good job with this one. Each track is super catchy, but also harken back to those nostalgic vibes too. So I would definitely say that this one, much like Civil Youth, Conversations, I feel like those two were probably the two closest ones out of my honorable mentions that would have been really close to this, top albums of the year. So, all right, guys. So now we're gonna get into the albums of the year. My 25th pick would be Chon's Homie. I know a lot of you were expecting this to be much higher on the list, in terms of what I thought was really good this year. But there have been some albums that I feel like were even much higher than this one. I know it's not skill based. It's really just upon me listening to it and really, I guess, not critiquing it, but just really getting into it. And I feel like the biggest proponent, or the biggest con about instrumental music for me is obviously there's no vocals. And I feel like, not to say that Chon doesn't do a good job at what they do. I think they are phenomenal musicians. I think this is probably their best record to date, in my opinion. But it was just not vibing with me in that sense that I could listen to it for. I feel like it's an album that you put on, you can listen to, just jam around if you are doing like a lot of things. It's not something you think about like in depthly unless you love like progressive rock and that sort of era of like instrumental music, in my opinion. This one is not a terrible record by any means. It's definitely in my albums of the year, so it's certainly not bad considering there was a lot of albums to choose from this year. I think that they did a phenomenal job with what they do, and they did some songs that are different. They had some guest people do some remixes on some of their songs, and then they had some really good like regular old Chon songs that you have come to know and expect from them. So I feel like it's a nice mix and blend of those two, and I definitely appreciate that one. So we're gonna move into track number 24. We're gonna move into album number 24, which is The Wise Man Fears, The Lost City. They are good friends of mine. They're from Indianapolis, Indiana, and they are a metalcore band. But I thought this record was absolutely phenomenal. If you love metalcore, if you love that sort of I almost get a We Came as Romans vibe to it. If you love that sort of styling of metalcore, I feel like this band is right up your tier, and definitely one to go listen to. I feel like they bested their last record, Castle in the Clouds, by a landslide. I think musically it's just on another level, and you can tell that they have progressed, they have grown, they have learned, and it's really come to a really unique record that ultimately blends Tyler's great clean vocals and Dennis's screams, and you got some really brutal tracks, but you got some really melodic tracks. So I think variety wise it really kind of hits home for me, and it's definitely one to give a listen to. So we're gonna move into album number 23, which is Silverstein's Dead Reflections. I think this one was a good one. I was kind of surprised at how low I put it on this list just because it's so good, but there was just albums out there that were just, in my opinion, better than that one, and that's really hard for me to say because I know I listened to this a lot. I listened to it all throughout the summer, because they were on Warped Tour, and stuff like that, and I felt like they did a phenomenal job on this one. It's kind of a return to form to me. They have tracks that are very nostalgic to Silverstein, back in their earlier days. They have some newer stuff that has that sort of newer vibe to it. They have some tracks that sound like Beartooth. They have some pop punk tracks. It's really eclectic, and I think that they put a lot of heart and effort into this one. Not to say that they haven't on other ones, but I feel like this one is the best sort of modern interpretation of what Silverstein is, and I'm excited for their new year, excited for this new tour that they're going to be on, headlining, and things of that nature. So we're going to move into album number 22, which is Picturesque, Back to Beautiful. I know that this one is pretty high up there, or pretty up low on the tier list. I mean, in terms of albums, but again, much like Silverstein, I think there was records that just had that sort of oomph that just took it over the top for me. But this one was really good. The only gripe that I had about it, and I feel like they kind of answered it in our most previous interview, was that they had to do half new songs, half old songs. So I'm excited to see if they'll release a new record or an EP in 2018, late 2018 probably. And hear new stuff. I know that they had 5 new tracks, and maybe I'm just being a little salty about it, but I love the older stuff and I love the new stuff. So for me, it was really in that in between zone. But I think that their older writing's phenomenal. I love the newer direction that they're going in. That sort of darker sort of feelings in the lyrics, and it's definitely one that I put on repeat a lot. I think that they are really talented, and I absolutely think this is a great record indeed. So we're going to move into 21. This one is Make Them Suffer Worlds Apart. I think that this one was also a phenomenal record. I think they definitely encapsulated Make Them Suffer. I know that they lost their keyboardist and clean singer, but they got a new one, and she's just as good. If not, in my opinion, better. I thought she was a better clean vocalist, and I feel like just the combination of really heavy guitars and the way that they write stuff is just really intricate. And doing that album review with Paul from The Wise Man Fears, I feel like it really kind of took me back in terms of a lyrical standpoint, which I appreciate. I think they did a phenomenal job on that front. There's no way that I could go through that or pick anything of that out. But musically, I feel like I know about that, and I think that they combine really great elements of heaviness, but they really kind of lighten it up with that piano and that sort of, ambient vibes that they have to their music. So to me, it was kind of a great balance of both, and it was definitely one that I would be remiss if I didn't add to the albums of the year, in my opinion. So we're going to do number 20, which is Idola's To Speak to Listen. I've seen these guys live, and they kill it. I think they are a really phenomenal band live. I think that Andrew does a really great job with his cleans. I think he has a really unique clean voice, and I've just been going through all of these records over this past month, pretty much, just to make sure that I feel like my tier list is accurate to how I feel. And it's definitely, with Idola, I think it's really good. I think it's a really solid record. Again, I feel like there was records that have that sort of oomph that I know I was listening to a lot and I put a lot of effort into listening to, and I'm appreciative that Idola is on this list. I'm excited for their headliner in the new year, which is going to be really amazing. You might see another familiar band on this album of the year list that will also be touring with them. So it's super cool that Idola is doing that. But definitely go check out To Speak to Listen. I think it's a great record. And again, I'm excited for new stuff that they have on the horizon. So we're going to move into number 19, which is Cold Rain's Fateless. They are a Japanese rock metalcore band, and they killed it on this record. I've been a huge fan of them. They were on last year's Warped Tour, or 2 years ago, I'm not entirely sure, but they were on Warped Tour for a year, and they blew my mind. They were one of those bands that I wanted to see, and I was able to see, which is really cool, and I hope that, fingers crossed, that they're on this year's Warped Tour, because that would just absolutely solidify that for me. But they put on a phenomenal live show, and I think that they equally represent that in the records that they do, and this one is no exception. It's definitely on that list, and it breaks the top 20, which is amazing. And it's just a phenomenal record from front to back. It's a clean vocal that you will not mix up with anybody else. I think he has a very unique, clean voice. And just the way that his range goes from that sort of low to high register, I think it's amazing, and it's definitely a band that I would recommend checking out and giving a listen to. So number 18 on my list is a good friends of mine, Villain of the Story, Wrapped in Vines, Covered in Thorns. I think that these guys put out a really great record, and while it kind of isn't breaking the boundaries of metalcore in and of itself, I think that the songwriting, the lyricism is really solid, and I think it even beats out what they write. I think they write with a really powerful voice, and it just shows in this type of music that they're working with here. And it really encompasses what I love about metalcore and what got me into metalcore. And I definitely feel like it pulls at those nostalgic roots, and I'm excited for what they're going to be doing in the future. If you haven't checked out Wrapped in Vines, Covered in Thorns, I would highly recommend so, for fans of like Memphis Mayfire, and that sort of genre of music. Really great stuff, and I'm excited for their new whatever they're doing in 2018. So number 17 on my list is no exception. I had to put these guys on the list. It's Ocean's 8 Alaska's Hikari. I think it's a really great record. I think the instrumentals are on another level. It's like god tier level. Just the drumming in and of itself. I typically do not focus on drumming just because I'm not a drummer, but the drumming on this is in freaking insane, man. It's so good. Seeing them live was a totally different story, and I would highly recommend checking out my show thoughts when they were touring with Wage War. But I thought that they did a really good job with this, kind of combining elements of Japanese culture with a sort of Japanese, styled instruments, as well as some electronic elements and some other interesting sorts of things that make this album unique. And I think that they did a really good job with that. I'm excited to see what they do in 2018, but this one is definitely one to give a listen to, and I liked it a lot. So number 16 is Like Moths to Flames, Dark Divine, and man, I thought this was a great record. And the reason why I thought it was a great record was because they took a gamble, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but I feel like in this case it really paid off. They really reinvented themselves. I felt like the last record was it was good, it was heavy, it was dark, and I loved that about it, but at the same time I felt like it was very generic, and it didn't it didn't grow. They didn't grow a lot, and I felt like in this record they grew tremendously. The clean singing from Chris definitely reminds me a lot of his past projects, A Graceful, even like Amorosa sort of stuff, and like even older like Moths to Flames. I think that he really kind of honed into his sound. He stuck true to what he knows, and he's a phenomenal clean vocalist. I don't know like why he stopped doing as much cleans. Maybe because he does screams at the same time, and I can understand that would be really hard to do as one person, but I really think he holds his own. And to me, the live scenario when they do them live, I feel like that holds up very well too in that regard. So I definitely feel like they had to wait onto why this record is definitely a great one to go check out. But I think the album is just pure gold, and I definitely like the direction that they're going into, and I'm excited to see what they do next in 2018, and just a new record in general. Their next record. It's going to be really interesting to see if they continue down that direction, because I really enjoyed it a lot. Alright, so we're at number 15. We're at the halfway point. Kind of. Yeah, I guess it's halfway because it's the honorable mentions. We're like 5. But anyway, my 15th choice is We Came as Romans, Cold Like War. And man, much like Moths to Flames, to me, they went true to form as well. They really went back. They dug up their roots. Yeah, I know you can make all the We Came as Romans jokes if you want. I know that I said that. But I think they did a phenomenal job with this one. This one is super catchy. Kyle really did a great job on the electronics on this one. And just the cleans back and forth between Kyle and Dave really pair very well. Dave's screams are really awesome in this record as well, and just instrumentally I feel like they took another step forward. I felt like the last record was very like radio friendly and very pop. This one is definitely much heavier, much more aggressive, and it has a lot more fuel behind it, which I love, and I hope that they continue to do that in the new year and with the new record. Their new drummer used to be from For Today, and I think he really added a great little element to their band too, as well. But the song's super catchy, and it's definitely one I'd recommend giving a listen to. So number 14 on my list is Wage War's Deadweight. I definitely enjoyed this record a lot. I know I've had conversations with friends and people over the internet about which they thought was better, Wage War's Deadweight or Blueprints. I still think it's hard for me to decide which one I like more. There's songs on this record that hit me very hard and very deeply, just lyrically, and there's tracks on, Blueprints that hit me hard and very dearly as well. So I feel like it's kind of like a 50-50 for me. I know some people are very adamant on being Deadweight being the better one, and there's people that are on the opposite side of the end and very adamant that Blueprints is better than Deadweight. But I'm not here to describe that or have fights about that. I think that this is a phenomenal record and a great follow-up to Blueprints. They kept very true to their sound. They had some really cool songs on there. For example, Stitch has this very Slipknot-y sort of new metal sound to it, and they have really slow, like, ballady sort of tracks, like in Johnny Cash. That one's a beautiful track. I mean, if you haven't checked that one out, I would highly recommend doing so, because that one's definitely one of my favorites. But this album, super good, definitely high up there on my list, and for no exception, I think that they did a phenomenal job on this record, and I'm excited to see what they do in the future as well. So we're going to move into number 13, which is Stick to Your Guns, TrueView. I definitely feel like this one is a superb record. I haven't been the biggest fan of Stick to Your Guns. I've always thought that they were a good band. I just never thought that they could produce greatness like this record. This one, to me, is their best record to date. It has tracks that are just in your face, just like you just want to punch someone, and it's so brutal. But they also have tracks that are just very mellow, very sort of rocky. One track kind of feels like a Day to Remember sort of song. I think it's the last song, but definitely has that sort of vibe to it, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the just the voicings of the different parts of the album, and I think that Jesse does an amazing job of both his screams and his cleans. I feel like his cleans have gotten so good, and to me, I think it's his best work just as a vocalist. Lyrically, it's just very deep, and I love it. I definitely am excited to see them with Counterparts and Architects in the new year. I think that tour is a banger and a half, so definitely, I'll be going to that one. And it's just a phenomenal record. If you haven't listened to TrueView, I don't know what you're doing. You're sleeping, but definitely go give this one a listen. It's one of my favorites of this year, most certainly, and we'll move into the next one. So number 12 on my list, couldn't be remiss to add this band onto my list. That rhymed, super sick. That's another rhyme, whatever. But number 12 is Gideons Cold. I think that this is their best record to date. No questions asked. I know that some people are going to hate me for it, but I think that they really compiled old stuff and new stuff from Gideon, and it just sounds great. It's super hard hitting. The guest vocalists that they have are really awesome. The guy from Hatebreed, as well as I think it's Brian something from Knock Loose. And I'm not the biggest Knock Loose fan, but I think he did a phenomenal job on this as a guest vocalist. But this album just hits hard. It's one that I love. It's one that I go back to if I'm ever like super just angry. I know I can listen to this record and just get some like anger out. And it just hits like a truck, man. If you've ever listened to Gideon, I can guarantee you it'll just throw you back. And this one is definitely one of those albums that kind of just throws you back in your chair, and you're like, whoa, this is cool. And they are just the nicest people. If you've ever met Dan, he's a super nice guy. I'm excited for the new year. They're going to be touring with Norma Jean, which is really cool, and I'm super stoked for them in the new year. But definitely go check out Cold if you haven't. Just a super heavy, phenomenal record to come from them this year. So we're going to move into 11. We're getting close to the top, and the next one on my list is Polaris's The Mortal Coil. They are a metalcore band from Australia, and I've been a fan of their band for a while. The Guilt and the Grief is one of my favorite EPs from, I think, last year that they released. It's so good, so heavy, very just so good, and I feel like they took a step up with the Mortal Coil. They just kind of took their stuff to the next level. I've been following Ryan Sue for a while on YouTube. Far before I started the channel, I thought that he's a really phenomenal guitar player, and I'm so excited that Polaris is doing well. I also feel like Sharp Tone has been on another level in terms of just albums this year. They have like a ton. I have like a ton of Sharp Tone records on this list, so it's kind of crazy, but it's definitely an album to go check out if you haven't already. They went with Grant McFarland, and I forget the other guy's name because I'm an idiot, but they went with the guys who do ABR's music. I think they do a phenomenal job too, and I feel like they encapsulated what Polaris does best, and they just have those hard hitting, really solid tracks, and I definitely feel like this one is an album to go check out. All right, guys, so we're into the top 10. These, for me, are some of my favorite records to come out this year. And obviously, that's the whole point of these albums of the year. But I feel like each one of these is really interchangeable, and depending upon how I feel, any one of these could be number one. But for number 10, and I think that it's going to stay at number 10, is Dayseekers. Dreaming is sinking, waking is rising. I think it's their best material to date as well. Much like I was saying about Gideon, I think that they have put out really great records, but I feel like this one just has this extra level of like anger and just aggression, and I love it. I've met Rory many times, and I think he's a phenomenal guy. I think he's a phenomenal vocalist. If you have not checked out Dayseeker live, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I think you should go change that in the new year. They just put on a great live show. Rory sounds great. His cleans are awesome, and his screams are even more brutal than I expected them to be. But this one is so good. It's catchy. They have some really like softer songs, but they have some really heavy, great tracks. One of my favorites is the one with Garrett Russell of Silent Planet. They kind of did a follow up to Dreaming in the Sea, or I forget exactly, that Sinking in the Sea, something like that. It's something with sea. I know I'm really bad at that, remembering things, but super phenomenal track, and I'm liking that they followed that up, and they got Garrett to redo another sort of part into that lineage of tracks. So definitely go check this one out. One of my favorites, and just an up and coming band that I definitely feel like you guys should go give a listen to. So number 9 on my list, this one's kind of a curveball for most of you. I am been a huge fan of this band ever since I saw them at Loudfest in New Jersey about, I think, 2 years ago. They were on tour with I the Mighty and Hands Like Houses, which, by the way, if they did that this time around, if they did that next year, I know I the Mighty's on tour with Our Last Night, but if they just did that, that'd be beautiful. But anyway, my number 9 on my list is Lower Than Atlantis' Safe and Sound. I think that this band is really phenomenal. They have those pop punk roots. They have rock roots. They've been touring with Blink-182 in the UK, and they've just been really getting big, and I love that about this band. They kind of combine elements of rock, pop, and I just feel like they're on this another wave of really good stuff. I've always felt that UK have really brought their A game in terms of what they do, and this is no exception. Definitely go give this one a listen. It has been a phenomenal year for UK music, but also with this record, I really enjoyed this one a lot, and it's definitely one that could be interchangeable with the number 1 on my list without a doubt. So we're going to move into number 8, which is While She Sleeps, You Are We. Another really great UK band that put out a really great, phenomenal record. I don't know what else to say about it. I said a lot in my album review of this record, but this record is so good. It's heavy. The cleans are phenomenal. The screams are really great. The guest feature with Ollie took me by surprise. Ollie Sykes of Bring Me the Horizon, for those of you who don't know. But phenomenal track, and I feel like they utilized him really well. But there's really tracks on this record that I don't think are bad at all. Like, none of them I thought were really terrible. And it was really hard for me to pick this list, and I don't know if you can physically see it, but it's just hard for me to say that. But I think that this one is definitely number 8. I think it's a phenomenal record, really kind of bringing that heavy sort of like metalcore and metal vibes back to music, and I love that about this band. They don't hide behind really much of anything. There's no like electronic elements. It's just straight rock and roll, baby, and I love that. So we're gonna move into album number 7, which is by Counterparts. You're Not You Anymore. I messed this up the last time. I'm glad I kind of took it slow, even though it sounded really dumb. But this one record is so good. And it's hard for me to put it at 7, but it's so good. And like I said, all these are really interchangeable to me, so I had to put it up on that top tier list. I think that this record really kind of evokes really great lyricism, but also has this just punch. Like it just punches you. It's like Fight Club, man. You know, that's how I feel when I listen to this record. It's a hard hitting record lyrically and instrumentally, and it really shows in the type of writing that they're doing. Go give this one a listen if you haven't already. I highly recommend it. So we're gonna move into album number 6, which is Veil of Maya's False Idol. I had some issues with them earlier in the year, which I will not care to explain on this video, but that does not hurt my feelings in regards to this record. I think that this one is definitely Veil of Maya's one of the best modern Veil of Maya records. And I think that Lucas kind of stepped up to his game from Matriarch. And that was a big thing, I think, for me in this record. I think that he really just expanded his clean vocals. His screams have gotten so much better, and just their instrumentation has kind of taken another level, in my opinion. They just know how to do stuff now. I felt like in Matriarch they knew what they were doing, but I feel like this one they have worked with Lucas for a while. He has been in the band for a little bit of time now, so that they've kind of had this camaraderie with him now, and it just, you can just sense it in the music in this album. It just feels more natural, feels like everything kind of fits into place a lot better, and it just sounds like that. You just know that's how it sounds, and that's what you can expect from this record. So definitely go give this one a listen. It was really hard for me to not put this in the top 5, but these top 5 I've probably been listening to the most, even not even just this month, but just throughout the year. They have been phenomenal. So we're going to move into album number 5, which is Andreas's Strange Memories on This Nervous Night. And like I mentioned previously in the Idola, it'd be a artist that you would know. He's going to be opening for that tour on the Idola headliner, and I definitely feel like this is a band or person that you need to go check out. I think that he really combines elements of chant music, but as well as with cleans, and I think that that is, to me, something that I love, and just something that I inspire to be as like a musician. I play guitar as well, and I just love his riff style, the way he writes songs, and they're just catchy as hell. Like, I listened to this I listened to this record for like, I think it came out in March or February, March, I'm not entirely sure. But I've been listening to it throughout this year, and it's still great. And I think for me, these top 5 records have been albums that, it doesn't matter how I feel, it doesn't matter, you know, how often I listen to them, they are still albums that I love and will go back to, even probably into 2018, that I love and adore. And this one is definitely one for me that I love and adore, just because Andreas is a homie. But not only that, but as well as I think it's really well written. Alan did a phenomenal job just coaching Andres and coming up with a phenomenal record that I love and that I share with my friends. And I think it's great. I definitely feel like it's one that you should go check out if you haven't already. And we're going to move on to the next one. So number 4 on my list is Movement Feel Something. And for me, this band I had never really gotten into even prior to them seeing them live, and I felt like for some reason I need to give this album a listen, or not even this album, the single, one of the singles that they released. I don't even remember which one the first one was, but I gave it a listen, and I was just like so encapsulated by how well it sounded and just the uniqueness of what Movements is, and they really hooked me so good. And I loved seeing them with Knuckle Puck. I got to meet Pat, super nice guy, down to earth, and hopefully in 2018 we'll be able to work together. But Feel Something, just, I definitely felt something, not to be punny or anything, but it just definitely had that pull to it, and it just strikes a chord with you. I think lyrically Pat does a really great job of doing that, and it's definitely a darker record, but at the same time it doesn't feel really dark just because of the instrumentation. But I love the passion, the feelings behind this record. It's definitely one of my top tier records. It might be one of my favorites of all time too, just in that sort of list of growing albums that I love. But this one is definitely one that I'm proud to own, and I'm proud to represent these guys. I love Movements. Go give this album a listen if you haven't already. I think it's an amazing record. So we're gonna do number 3 album of the year, which should be no to surprise to you if you are a fan of this channel. It's I the Mighty's Where the Mind Wants to Go, Where You Let It Go. I am a huge fanboy of I the Mighty. I'm gonna spare you the details on all that sort of stuff, but I've been following them for a really long time, and for me, this record encapsulates what they do. I knew that initially I wasn't on board with it, but it was some there's always something about this band that no matter if I don't like it right away, I will grow to love it. And I think that I have grown to love this record. I think Brent is one of my favorite vocalists in the scene currently, maybe behind Lucas Worley of Artifacts Pareo, but he just does a phenomenal job of just kind of interlacing those great lyricisms and just how you feel when you're going through some hard times, and then some really just sort of interesting sorts of tracks. I think sonically this record really is an expansive collection of what I the Mighty does. They have some really kind of like open-ended tracks with I think it's where You Let It Go is very like big and just kind of orchestral in that regard. And then they have some really kind of classic I the Mighty tracks, which is like Where the Mind Wants to Go. And I love that. I think that I know that I wasn't on board initially with this record, but I definitely have grown to love this. Like I mentioned previously, I think that they just did a really great job with this one, and it's definitely one of my favorites of this year, without a doubt. So we're going to move into 2. We're getting really close to the top, so for those of you who've been waiting for a really long time, get ready. But my number 2 is Novelist Noir. I'm just at a loss for words on this record. I think it's really close between 1 and 2, honestly. But this one, I have to put at number 2. Just because I think it's great, but I just feel like number 1 is pretty much flawless for me. But this one is damn near close. I'm not going to lie. But this one just... I've been following this band for a while too, and just the way that they have grown over the past couple records, I really love Souvenirs. I think if you haven't checked out that record from Novelist, definitely go give this one a listen. But I think this record is really kind of a departure from what they do. There are some tracks that have that sort of classic vibe to them, but at the same point, I like that they're doing different stuff, and I like that they're doing more clean stuff. I think their cleans are superb. Love the cleans. And the screams have definitely gotten better. I'm not saying that they were bad at any point, but I was surprised that they got even better from the next record on. The guest features are pretty much very prevalent. They have Jesse Cash, I think the guy from Dream on Dreamer. They have the vocalist from Deceiver. Maybe another one. I think they had They definitely had a saxophone guest, but I couldn't figure out who it was. Prior to the review, and I still couldn't figure out who it was now, but that was amazing. And just the change ups of sounds and uniqueness, this one just kind of encapsulates that sound and weirdness that I've loved about Novelist. And it's definitely one of those albums that if you haven't listened to this year, I would highly recommend giving it a listen. For me personally, it's one of my favorites, so I love this record, and I'm so glad to own this one too. Alright guys, so you've been waiting for this moment. Number 1, my favorite record of this year is Ghost Atlas's All Is in Sync and There's Nothing Left to Sing About, Jesse Cash's side project. Jesse Cash is the clean vocalist and guitar player of Era, but he also has a side project band called Ghost Atlas. They have released, I believe, another full length, and they've released an EP, maybe 2 EPs. I'm not entirely sure, but this record is flawless to me, and I'm going to go through the reasons why. I didn't do a review on this just because, I don't know, I forgot, and I didn't want to do it like a month later. But this record I bought, I think it was last month, but this record is just the encapsulation of my growing up in this sort of alternative music scene. It definitely harkens back to bands like Seosin, that sort of air of music, maybe not even the Used, but like definitely like the Seosin sort of vibe to what they do, and I love it. I think that Jesse has an amazing clean voice. I've always loved his voice in Era, but I feel like he's able to do a lot more and kind of express what he does in this side project because it's his. So you can definitely tell the different inspirations and feels behind this record. There are some elements of era a little bit sprinkled throughout. I feel like it would be remiss if he didn't have that in his music, but this record is just blew me away. When I first listened to it and I first just kind of like delved into this one, it just kind of took me to another place, and I feel like to me that is what really spoke to me about this record. It's just beautifully composed, just flawless singing from Jesse, and it's just songs that I know the lyrics to and I sing in my car, and I love every second of it. So this one to me represents my albums of the year. I love this record. I'm so glad I own it. And I hope that inevitably, if I see Era, which I might see Era with August Burns Red, I hope that I can get it signed by Jesse, because it is so amazing. It's so beautiful, and it's something that I just love. And I hope that other people go check out this project, because to me, I feel like this deserves as much attention as Era does. And to say that it doesn't really hurts my feelings, because I'd love to see him try to do this live. It would be kind of a dream of mine to see that. And I hope that Jesse, if you're watching this, that would be really sick. I know that it's hard because you think Era is your main priority, but I'd love to see Ghost Atlas get to that point and do the same sort of thing. So that is my albums of the year. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on it. Do you think the same thing? Obviously, probably one wouldn't, but let me know what your favorites from this year were. I'd really like to know. I'm really trying to expand my music variety this year, and I feel like I did a pretty good job. It's very hard to find stuff that I really enjoy. Another kind of honorable mention as well is the newest John Mayer record. I really love that, The Search for Everything, I think it's called. Really phenomenal. I didn't get all the way through it so in time for me to do this album review, but it's definitely one of those that's on my list, and I'm a huge John Mayer fanboy. But love these albums this year. Please go check all of these records. It would mean a lot to me just as a person, and just to support these people that work really hard to put out music and do what they love. So go support these guys if you can. Go pick it up. Show some love to these people. They really deserve it, and I know that I've supported all of these bands on this list without a doubt. So that's it. I'm going to be doing EPs of the year really soon, probably the same week. I'm going to try to have them both out by the end of this week before New Year's, so definitely do that. I hope you guys had a lovely holiday, and I hope you guys have a lovely New Year's as well. I will be doing all that sort of stuff. I want to do a hangout session maybe Friday, probably Saturday night, actually. I might do that. Definitely check back with the channel for that. I'll probably do it on YouTube because that's really cool. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed this list, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit that thumbs up. It really does go a long way. Thank you guys so much for your support. I couldn't have done it without you guys this year, and I'm excited for 2018 this year. So without further ado, guys, my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you enjoy what we do, make sure to go check out the other series we do. We do album reviews, we do band interviews, and we do live videos, so definitely go check that out. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps out our channel, helps us grow. Make sure to hit that like button as well. Go follow us on social media. That's all down below. We try to keep that as updated as possible. We also made a new website where we'll be posting photos of upcoming concerts and stuff like that, which you can go check out at audioaddictionmedia.com, and come get your fix with us, guys. Talk to you later. Deuces.